first thing I want to report on this morning, we have this crew, Williams, McGee, Young, and Harden, that were arrested on October 27, 2018. Ultimately, they were charged with numerous counts of firearm and felony firearm. And what's really troubling about this is that when these 4 people were arrested, they were in 2 cars, and they had a young infant in the back seat, and next to the young infant was a guy with an AK-15. Additionally, I can tell you that some real observant citizens found them on a street and figured that they were up to no good, if you will. They also noticed that one of them didn't know the street because they had run off the curb where our streets were being repaired and they were stuck on the street. Ultimately, our detectives made plenty of work out of this, and they investigated and found that the subjects were more than likely involved in an altercation at a local bar, and they left. They went home to get weapons, and they came back. And due to the citizens' quick actions and the responding officers, I'm very confident that a more serious crime was averted. And again, you hear me say this a million times, if it wasn't for our citizens calling and our officers responding, there's no telling how this would have ended up. And I can also tell you that Child Protective Services is involved and looking to hold the parents accountable. Next. I call these the regional wrecking crew. You got Tatby, Ferris, and Klein. They happen to live in nearby Dearborn Heights. On October 30th, again, a very observant citizen called us, stated that three subjects were entering their neighborhood and searching through cars, some of which were unlocked. Our officers set up a surveillance and apprehended these 3 gentlemen here that had violated the security of our community. They were subsequently arrested for numerous counts of larceny from auto. And I don't mind that all of our communities see these guys because they're not going to quit when they get out. And again, crime knows no borders, and these guys really victimized our entire neighborhood here. Next, please. We got a lot of calls on a recent armed robbery and critical assault of an area doctor. And early on this offense that occurred on October 10th, our detectives worked tirelessly and immediately arrested Emmanuel Vaughn. He's still in jail on a $1 million bond. The investigation did in fact continue, and I want to report today that a second subject, Jasmine Moore, has been arrested in connection with that crime. And it appears that Miss Moore may have been a patient and or an acquaintance of the doctor, and they're both awaiting trial. And what I want to tell the community today is that although this really violated the security of our neighborhood on the West End, this was not a random act, and these people somehow knew the doctor and targeted him specifically. Doesn't make it any nicer, but it's good to know that it wasn't a random act. Next, please. Some of you in the media may have seen Mr. Nathan Ling here. In fact, I think he held some kind of media event while his arrest was imminent. Mr. Ling came into our city on November 7th, and during 3 different encounters with our officers, he escaped and ran from the police. Ultimately, he returned to the city where he crashed into a bar located at Michigan Avenue in Wyoming. Upon his arrest, he was charged with multiple crimes in our region, a stolen car, a couple of counts of fleeing and eluding, and if some of you may know, he was the gentleman caught on that second floor where he was quite impressed that the media was there. 3 times he raced through our cities at speeds of 100 miles an hour, and our officers had to discontinue the pursuit. And these kind of things really jeopardize the safety of community and officers alike. And I guess we handled it as best we could on that night. That was another 3 a.m. episode. Next, please. This is Hector Vasquez. This is kind of perplexing to me. Subsequent to his arrest on October 1st, Mr. Vasquez reported to the police department here, and I happened to be the one that interviewed him. Mr. Vasquez alleged that the arresting officer stole $700 from him. We did quite an extensive investigation. Our officers used body cam and a video in their cars. And I'll say this, we were very fortunate that enough was caught on the video in the car and on the body cam to clearly show that Mr. Vasquez was not telling the truth. I'm kind of at a loss as to why he did file the complaint, because when you reviewed the video, it seemed that the officer was extremely polite to him, kind to him, and quite honestly went easy on him, which is, within the discretion as to what this young man could have been charged with. He had ample time to explain his story. He stuck to the story, and as a consequence, he has a false felony or false police report for larceny charges that he's facing currently. And at times, we really grapple whether we want to charge citizens or not, because we want citizens to always let us know when we can do a better job. But in this case, this young guy went out and told a lot of people in the community that this officer had stolen $700 and seven $100 bills from him. And clearly, his booking, photos, the video in the back, video on the street, and some really hard work by our detectives proves that that was a false statement. So he'll be charged in misdemeanor court. And let me make full disclosure here. Our officer did in fact have some procedural issues. He should have done a better job on inventory searches, and the use of the video was not in total compliance with our policy, but I can tell you that he did enough where we could piece the story together, and there's an internal going on about that, but again, the officer was exceedingly polite to him. On the flip side of that, and I'm not going to give you a whole lot of information on this because I think that the young man suffered enough. Last couple of weeks ago, we had a young man charged with armed robbery, and he was identified as such by the victim, and our detectives went really above and beyond to figure out whether in fact he was the suspect or not. And after some great work, they went out and checked videos all over our neighborhood. They were able to corroborate what this young man was telling us, although all the evidence pointed to him being the perpetrator in an armed robbery. So we work at this both ways. Our men and women are very hard here. We're high on integrity and professionalism, and I was very happy to see that we were able to clear that young man who was just starting out his life at the age of 17, and he was just coming off the bus, actually, as it turned out, going to check on his grandmother before he went home after school. Next, please. Again, we had a very observant postal employee on November 7th. He saw something that didn't look right at the mailbox, looked in the window, saw a man face down in our community here, called the police and fire rescue to try to get him help. Unfortunately, it was too late, and the gentleman had been deceased. Many members in the community saw the police come out, and that's what these weapons are here for. The gentleman, the decedent, was a federal firearms dealer, and he had a lot of weapons stored within his house. Kind of put some of our community on edge, but I can tell you from the appearance of these weapons, they all have individual locks on them. If some of you would care to see the amount of ammo we took out of the house, it's in a trailer in the back. But again, our postal employee was on the spot, notified the officers immediately, and unfortunately it was too late to render any kind of first aid. Next. We had a fire, 2100 block of Denwood, and I'm going to show you a video. Again, our citizens and officers worked hand in hand. Clearly, the subject of this injury here is still recovering in the hospital, but they now have a fighting chance for recovery. Our officers did suffer some smoke inhalation, as did the citizen that helped. But when I show you this video here, I can tell you that our officers tried to go in that house 2 or 3 different ways, and ultimately they had to break the window. It's with purpose that we're not going to show you the victim, but you can see here how quick a member of our community and our officers jumped in. So who's got that one?
Here you go, here you go, here you go. Guys, let me help you. Come on! Come on! Come on! Come on! she got out of the home or something. Stay in the hall. I'm trying to get out the window. Okay, what will? 20 police cars are being clear the main road here. Several lots pulling up.
I'm happy to tell you that that citizen, although they have a way to go, are recovering at a local hospital. But again, you can see some of the type of work that our men and women do. Next, please. I know Captain Issa Shaheen would always want me to remind our citizens to lock it or lose it. Crime is down in that area about some 30%, but oftentimes, up to last week, we get calls where somebody left a key in the car and or a loaded weapon in the car. So again, we want to remind our citizens, lock it and not lose it. Next, please. Something near and dear to all of our hearts, crime is down 8.4% year to date. Last year, you may recall, the hard work of the men and women here, we reduced crime over 14%. And I'd like to take this opportunity to remind our citizens that with the holidays coming, we want to make sure that if they have packages, everything's online now, you have more packages delivered to your house. More and more we find these people that are victimizing citizens, so look out for your packages and notify some trusted neighbor or family members to make sure that they get the packages. At least 2 times a day we get runs on that now, and with the holidays coming, that's something that's certainly going to escalate. So I think I've covered very briefly everything we have this morning, if there's any questions.
Chief, are any of the officers who were involved in that rescue here to talk to at all?
Is that the other team?
Yes.
They're not here today.
All right, well then that's fine. I mean, but maybe you could just speak a little bit more about, you know, what they did. I mean, obviously, I know this is part of the job, but clearly that was a, you know, situation that could have ended with, you know, this person's death, and they saved her. So.
No question, and you know, we all have great response time, including our fire department, but that was before fire made the scene, so they took matters into their own hands, and you saw what I saw, so they did a great job out there, as did the citizen that helped pry the window out, which you don't see all of it, but that's what the citizen did.
Was that just a neighbor?
A neighbor from the neighborhood. Ma'am?
A Dearborn woman is recovering in U of M hospital from smoke inhalation. Can you confirm that she's the woman that was rescued?
I can't confirm that, but you seem to know more than I do. I'm not denying it, and we always protect people in the hospital, so if you know that, now all these folks know that, so thank you.
Chief, where in town were these guns? Like what block number?
Well, they were in the Springwells subdivision, which is right here behind the police station off of Greenfield and Rotunda.
How many guns are we talking about and ammunition we're taking from them?
Well, it's a trailer full of ammo. A lot of the guns were probably stored in very secure safes, which is, you know, supposed to be done. I think we have 22 sitting here.
And were they all registered, and were they underneath the guidelines?
Well, there's no need to register these by law. He was a federal firearms dealer, and you can see that he went through great pains to ensure that they're properly secured and, you know, taken care of.
Any foul play suspected in that?
No, it appears to be natural.
Was the ammunition safely stored for a residential?
It was. It was. Just given the amount, it was kind of unsettling to some people in our community. Good or bad, this is not out of the norm. Many people own a lot of guns in our country, so.
What's going to happen with the guns and the ammo?
We're still working our way through that. I'm not sure if a next of kin would be entitled to get them. We're dealing with our ATF because he is a federal firearms licensee, and if they can be released to a family member, that's probably what will occur.
Chief, with regard to the psychologist, what more can you tell us with regard to the relationship there and how these people and?
Well, I can tell you, which has been said before, the psychologist is 75 years old. It appears that Miss Moore was perhaps a patient and or an acquaintance, and it wasn't a random act. You'll hear more about that in court, but it was not a random act, so it was deliberate.
Were they after medication?
we're not sure of that motive. But it was a robbery, so some property was in fact taken.
Can you talk at all about what kind of property was taken?
Personal property. Not that it's personal, but it's personal property. Okay.
Jewelry and that kind of thing.
Personal property.
About the false police report, you said that he missed some things. Are you saying that you're investigating the report that he ignored the unsecured rifle? You said you're still investigating the officer?
No, the officer is in violation, or appears to be in violation of some of our policies. But clearly, he's not in any violation in relationship to the allegation that he stole $700 from the subject that he arrested.
But
Mr.
it also said on there the man claimed he ignored his rifle, so is that what you're investigating?
Yeah, but I can tell you there was no rifle. We painstakingly tracked that part of the story as well as every other part, and there's ultimately no rifle. So we don't suspect that anyone took it because we've concluded very painstakingly that there was no rifle. Thank you for that, though.
Chief, how many officers do you have, and do they all wear body cameras on their shift?
Everybody on patrol wears body cameras. We have full complement is 191. We might be one short right now due to retirement. And everyone on patrol does use them, and there's about 100 people working patrol that are all outfitted with body cams. We're among the first in the state to do that, by the way, if someone should happen to ask you.
How is the doctor doing now, if you mentioned that?
He's recovering. I mean, you know, I can say that we all heal up a little slower these days, but he's recovering and he's doing well. Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.